Welcome, my friends. Day 27. Before you know it, this program's going to be done. Today, we're talking about risk management process 2 and process 3. Now, very carefully, there is a difference between identifying risks and qualitatively analyzing risks. Identifying risks is just identifying what could go well, what could go wrong. These uncertainties, just identifying them. For example, if we get done on time, we could take on more work from this client. There's a positive risk that we will win more business, but it's contingent on doing well. There's a positive risk. We could make $5 million more. Okay, it's a positive risk. Or you could say, if we don't meet this milestone, there'll be a penalty. There's a risk we won't meet this milestone because one of our key people has left. Negative risk. See? So you identify the cause. What could cause the opportunity to happen? If we get done early, this could happen. And then what will the impact be? $5 million more work. So there's a model of cause, risk, effect. The cause, if we finish early, the risk, we could get more work, more opportunities. The effect, $5 million more. That's positive. But in terms of negative, you could think about the cause, oh, it's the schedule, the risk, getting behind schedule, the effect, a $5 million penalty. For example, just for example. So when you identify risk, you got to think about cause, risk, effect. That's the model you always want to be thinking about. Now, as you identify risks, there are some intricacies that I want you to be aware of. So let's open your favorite book and go to 11.2, because the identification of risks has many things attached to it. I want to read some of these for you. I may touch on these in the video, but I really wanted to make them clear. So let's go to page 441. Identify risk considers both individual project risks, those that can affect an activity, and sources of overall project risk, those that can affect the entire project. So you got these tiny little risks that could affect the task on the project, but you've got other risks that are huge that could affect the project as a whole in terms of weight. This is where you identify both the individual ones and the sources of the overall project risks. It says, participants in risk identification activities may include project manager, project team members, project risk specialists, customers, subject matter experts from outside the team, end users, other project managers, operations managers, stakeholders, risk management experts within the organization. A lot of people. Now, while these personnel are often key participants of risk identification, all means all, project stakeholders should be encouraged to identify individual project risks. It is particularly important to involve the project team so they can develop and maintain a sense of ownership. So in other words, no holds barred, invite everyone in. It says, when describing and recording individual project risks, a consistent format should be used for risk statements. So what is a risk statement? Cause, risk, effect, pretty much. You want to make that consistent across the board. It says, to ensure that each risk is understood clearly and unambiguously in order to support effective analysis and risk response development. Then it says, risk owners for individual project risk may be nominated as part of identify risk process. So think about it. As you identify the risk, you could say, oh, that risk affects person X. You're going to be the risk owner. You're going to come out with a strategy for how to counteract the risk. This early, it's a pre risk owner solidification, should I say, because you're not saying it's etched in stone, but it's the beginnings of, you could be a risk owner, you could be a risk owner type thing. So we're not saying it's etched in stone and it can't change, it's the beginning, right? So it says risk owners or for individual project risk may be nominated as part of identify risks and will be confirmed. You see that? So it's the beginnings, but it's not etched in stone. It says confirmed during the perform qualitative risk analysis process. So identify them here, right? Prospective risk owners. And then when you get to qualitative risk analysis, that is when you step up. All right, for sure, you are the risk owner. It says preliminary risk responses may also be identified and recorded and will be reviewed and confirmed as part of the plan risk responses process. So another layer of understanding. In identify risk, you do a lot of preliminary stuff. You identify, oh, you could be a possible risk owner, and you also identify, oh, that could be a possible thing we do for this risk. You're not etching it in stone. It is not saying this is going to be our response, but it's the beginning of identifying possible responses. You see that? So it says preliminary risk responses may also be identified and recorded and will be reviewed and confirmed as part of the plan risk responses process. So what am I saying in essence? Let's go to the whiteboard really quick because I want to make sure you get this. So we have identify risk, and this is where we identify, ID the risk, but at the same time, we have a preliminary identification of the risk owner and the risk responses. And what is going to happen? Eventually, when you get to perform qualitative risk analysis, you are going to firm up who the risk owner really is. And when you get to plan risk responses, you're going to firm up what exactly you will do to respond to those risks, okay? So this is preliminary, but it is important that you understand this is where the narrative could happen. Now, on some projects, they may not even assign the risk owner till much later, but you do need to know that it's possible that it starts here in a preliminary fashion. All right, so it says, identify risk is an iterative process since new individual risk may emerge as the project progresses through its life cycle, and the level of overall risk will also change. The frequency of iteration and participation in each risk identification cycle will vary by situation. This will be defined in the risk management plan. So that is one of the big things I wanted to show you in identify risk. But we also have today another big area, perform qualitative risk analysis. So I have to make these very clear because they're very slippery. And even though we're going to cover this again during the training for today, it's important that I highlight these to you. So it's a big day. Risk is a big area. Let's go to perform qualitative risk analysis. So what does it say here on page 419? It says perform qualitative risk analysis is the process of prioritizing. That's what you're doing. Prioritizing project risks for further analysis or action by assessing their probability and impact as well as other characteristics. The key benefit of this process is that it focuses on high priority risks. So there are really two things you're doing. You are not only identifying the risks, but in this process, you are beginning to prioritize the risk. So at this point, you've already identified them, but you're gonna prioritize them by putting them in order, and then you're gonna distinguish which of these do we need to further act on, or which of these are just gonna go down to the bottom of the risk register to be watched because they're not that significant. So there are two things you do here. One, you prioritize, but you also categorize the risks. And categorizing the risk can help you such that if you attack one category of risks that are tied to, let's say, one root cause, you could end up responding to many risks by just one action when you understand how they're grouped and how they're classified. So one of the things you find here is risk categorization. Let's go there really quick. It's on page 425. It says risks to the project can be categorized by sources of risk. You see, that is one of the things we're doing. I might be spilling the beans, but it's important that you identify these up front because I want you to really get this area. It's a very slippery area. There's so many moving parts to risk, and the more of this stuff I'm able to show you up front, the better. So that's perform qualitative risk analysis. Another thing you need to identify and perform qualitative risk analysis, this is where we actually use the probability impact matrix to score the risk. So what do I mean by scoring the risk? Let me show you real plain here, just so quickly that it will make absolute sense. Probability of a risk on a scale of 1 to 5 is a 3. The impact on a scale of 1 to 5, 5 being the worst, is a 5. The risk score, we call it the risk score, is probability times impact. That is 3 times 5, that's 15. What are we going to do with that number? We're going to use that number to rank the risks, to put the risks in order, the highest risk score down to the lowest. But that's not the only thing we're going to do. We're also going to look at the risks from other perspectives. And some of the other perspectives could be, all right, the probability I know, the impact I know, but how urgent is it? Can it happen tomorrow? Is this a risk that is going to happen in the next 2 days? Or is this a risk that is not as urgent? Maybe it's happening 2 years from now. So while you've identified it and you've analyzed it based on the analysis of the urgency, you could say, all right, we're going to take care of this risk. We're going to treat it, but not tomorrow. Instead, we're going to treat a risk that is more urgent. You get what I mean? So welcome to the 9 additional parameters of a risk. This is also talked about in 9.3. If you go to page 423, it's called assessment of other risk parameters. You want to watch out for it. It's a really big topic for many students on the exam, and there's so much stuff we need to talk about. You see, the intro is one of the longest intros ever because risk is a beast, and it's important that I do the due diligence to expand on it. So 2 processes today. Identify the risks, but you're going to perform a qualitative risk analysis, and you're going to come out with a list of the risks, they're scored, they're prioritized, they're categorized, and then you can deduce which of those to actually carry out treatment for, and which of these you are going to leave at the lower part of the register on a watch list of sorts, because you hear the term risk watch list. And those are the risks that are not that significant that fall to the lower parts of the risk register. All right, so let's jump into our lesson for today. It's going to be long. I'll see you at the end.